Hello and welcome to another episode of the Birdie Golf Club podcast. You join me this week where our guest is going to be Andy, aka the Cog Coach on Instagram, and we're going to be talking about how the mindset of a golfer can be changed, how we can make sure that we are not hindering our game through the one thing that we can control, and that is of course our mind. So that's a very serious subject for us to talk about, but I look forward to hearing everything Andy has to say on that and everything that we can learn, and hopefully we can digest that information in a positive way so that we're not overloaded with information when we come out onto the course. So I look forward to that chat, which will be happening very soon, and for you guys even sooner. What's happened in the world of golf? In the world of golf, well, guess what? Scotty Scheffler won again. Oh, unbelievable. Shock, horror. Who can believe it? Scotty Scheffler's really good at golf. Again. Quite a remarkable sort of second half of the season that he's had after early struggles, which was basically just due to injury. Let's be honest. Unbelievable. I mean, to come back from being sort of, what was he, 4 shots behind going into the last day, and within 5 holes, I think he was level with Bobby Mack. I mean, you got to feel for Robert McIntyre. I mean, he played unbelievable golf for the first 3 days, and then just got Scotty Scheffler in the final day. Didn't play his best by any means, but I mean, Scotty is just inevitable, as I've heard it being put. So fair play to him. It's going to be tough to beat this weekend during the FedEx playoff final. You can only really see one man winning it. Rory looked well off of it because he basically just took a big break because he knew he'd be in that final 30, obviously comfortably in second still in the standings. And I think we saw this week the first time where it was clear that there is a real gearing up towards the Ryder Cup now. It just had that feeling towards the last day, and there always is that element to it when it's over in the States and when it's over here of clearly home crowd favourite, but it was very obvious that that there was only one person that the crowd wanted to win, and the USA chant started and everything like that. So, I mean, it's gearing up now. We're only like a month away from it. 6 lock-ins basically have already been announced for the US team. I think we're pretty close to it for the European team, although there's a few DP World Tour events, I think, where people can still earn some OGR ranking points. So, OGR? Anyway. A little bit closer to home, though. A little bit more relatable for the everyday golfer, but really not, because these guys are insanely good at golf. I attended my first Clutch Pro Tour event the other day. It was at Mannings Heath, who, through the podcast, you'll know that I've had a good sort of level of participation with them. And I really enjoyed my time there. What I would say was I was shocked at the lack of crowds, considering it's a free event to go to. If there's one near you, double check that, but I'm pretty sure most places it's free to attend. And you get to see some incredible quality of golf, and actually quite the dramatics as well. Now, I will caveat with this by saying, and if people from the Clutch Pro are listening, please know that I did enjoy the event. I really did. And I understand the difficulties in trying to score an event like that live. And people have become so accustomed to what's available on the telly and everything like that I totally get that it's difficult. I will say that attending the event and kind of not knowing what's going on because the online leaderboard doesn't update quick enough. Some guys it's updating very fast. Other guys, they're still on the 9th hole when they're on the 16th. Does make the watching experience a little bit difficult. You have to go by word of mouth, and that's what led to me missing a clip, which in some ways I'm glad I didn't get for the players' sake, but in other ways obviously it would have been a great clip, and it's on me. It's not on the Clutch Pro Tour event, team for what me not recording something that happened. But essentially, going into the last hole, the runaway leader at one point was Dongwon Kim. Now, what I didn't know at the time was that for Dongwon, if he'd have won that event, that would have given him immediate Hotel Planet Tour status. And I'm hoping to have Dongwon on the podcast at some point because, well, we'll talk about that in a bit because the way he handled things was amazing. But going into the last hole, he had a couple of bad holes going in, and the clubhouse lead was 14 under. And I thought, coming into that last hole, through what we were told, sitting on the 18th green, was that Dongwon was level with the clubhouse lead. They were all on 14 under. Now, what actually was the case was Dongwon was 15 under going into that last hole. So he hits it to green side in 2, just off the green, chips on, has a putt for par. Now, in my head, he needs to make that putt to make it into a playoff. What the truth was, that putt was to win. That putt slides by and literally rolls out to maybe, I don't know, under a foot. Had to be under a foot away from the hole. And I stopped recording at that point because I think that putt means nothing. What it actually means is he goes into a playoff, and it would have been a 6-man playoff at that point. Dongwon steps up to the putt, and like most of us, like all of us would, taps it in. He gives it a firm tap, but a tap. The putt hits the back of the cup and bounces straight back out towards him, like perfectly. Like the geometrical pattern of it was unbelievable. It was literally just like that, in, out. Crazy. Falls to the exact same spot he putted from. I mean, the fact he didn't accidentally two-touch it with the putter is beyond me. You know, it was unreal. I thought he didn't mean anything, that putt. But that made him miss out on the playoff, and clearly it's an emotional moment. It's a crazy moment. Probably the craziest thing I've ever seen live in golf, let alone even on the telly maybe. I don't know. It was crazy. And the fact there was so much on that putt as well, he would have gone into a playoff, still had that chance, that Hotel Tour Planner card. I mean, he handled it with unbelievable grace, unbelievable dignity in the moment. There was no swearing because there was kids present and everything like that as well. There was no swearing, which you'd have probably, rightfully in that moment, you could understand it. But just a shake of the head, stood there for a moment in disbelief, tapped in the other putt, and walked off. I wanted to go up to him afterwards, but he was in clear distress, pretty upset, because for these guys, it's week in, week out. They're just trying to make it to that next level of golf. The money isn't crazy. They're not competing for millions like they are on tour. It's very much survival, and I think that was really what I found watching that event. You got a sense of just how much it means to these guys. So a really unfortunate end. James Claridge ended up winning the playoff. I couldn't stay for that. I had to head off home, but James Claridge won the playoff hole on the first hole. That's his first ever win. Gives him some great ranking points as well. So congratulations to him. And overall, just a really great day. My only gripe was the fact that just on course, very difficult to follow what was actually going on, and word of mouth is what you relied on. But there's no easy fix to that other than hundreds of volunteers, which probably aren't easy to come by. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my experience. I will be doing it again. I would say to anyone, if you get the chance, go. Do it. You won't regret it. You're going to have an amazing time, and you're going to see some really, really great golf. And I'm hoping to have a few of the guys that I met on the day or posted clips of afterwards that have reached out onto the podcast, so we can learn a little bit more about their story and bring it to a little bit more of a local level of golf and what it takes to compete out there. So yeah, that's probably enough for me. Not much else going on. My ankle's slowly getting better. I hurt that last week playing rounders. It's slowly getting better. I've had to delay the start of this AI coach stuff that I've been doing until that heals up, because I don't want to cause any long-term issues there. So yeah, that's about it. Without much further ado, let's... I know that really annoys people, because it's without much ado, isn't it? But I always add further. But it is what it is. There's another one of my sayings. Anyway, let's get into this episode with Andy, the Cog Coach. And as always, if you're enjoying the podcast, please remember, hit that follow button, hit the review button, leave a 5-star review, share with your friends, leave a comment, find us on Instagram at Birdie Golf Club Podcast. There are big things coming on this podcast, and I'm very, very excited. So please join me on the journey. Anyway, let's get to our time with Andy, the Cog Coach. You're obviously known as like the Cog Coach. So where did your journey start? Let's go right back. Okay. Let's go. When was the first time you picked up a golf club?
Okay. So I started playing golf when I was about 13, which maybe a bit later than some others that kind of go into it as some form of profession. But before that was probably more about cricket than golf. But yeah,
okay.
Picked up golf at 13, just with my dad and a good mate of mine and his dad, and then ended up playing at the golf course that I still play at now. So still a member at the course where it all began. What would that be? Best part of 25 years ago.
Nice one. I mean, it goes quick that time, doesn't it?
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
And when did you first notice the difficulties and the relationship between golf and the mental side of the game?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, my own interest in the mental side of the game, it definitely started with trying to improve my own game. So I would say there's actually quite a clear moment really where I kind of really thought, this mental game stuff actually makes a difference. And I was going on a golf trip. I was already a low single figure golfer at the time. I was on a plane on the way to Portugal and just read a Bob Rotella book. I'd picked him up before and kind of read a few bits, but really sat down and read it. And there was just some kind of light bulb that sort of went off in my mind from reading that book, whether it was just, start to finish, actually reading it all the way through rather than just little snippets here and there. But yeah, that was definitely the moment that I bought into kind of the mental side of the game being something that actually can transform how well you play and actually help you to actually play better golf than you maybe realised that you could before starting to focus on that.
Yeah. And for you, when did that, because I've seen your Instagram page and I see the words MSc, and I don't know exactly what they mean. So could you please explain that to me?
Yeah, okay. MSc, Masters of Science. So it's basically, okay, cool. What that alludes to is the fact I've done 2 master's degrees. So basically, I've done a master's degree in psychology and then another master's degree in sports psychology. So that's what that alludes to.
Thank you. Also, I didn't want to have to ask that question, but I thought, at the same time I've done it, so here we are. And that's interesting because I've seen recently, and you might have seen it as well, Bryson was talking about, you see clearly now he's getting involved in that school side of things and how people learn, and he said that before in his experience he struggled at school. He struggled with all the different subjects because all he wanted to do was go and play golf. But then when he started relating those subjects to golf, he was like, oh, okay, yeah, now I care about those things. I care about nutrition. I care about geometry. I care about all these different things because I can relate it to something I care about. Did you do the same when it came to, obviously, when you were doing your Masters in Science? Did you make sure that you sort of always related it back to golf? Was it that thing, or did you just care about the cognitive side of
No, the long-term goal was always going to be golf related. So I actually came to those degrees a little bit later than, again, some might. It wasn't straight from kind of college, university into those. I worked in like a corporate environment for 4 or 5 years before actually going back to study and then do a master's in psychology and then a master's in sports psychology. So yeah, I definitely, I was working in London. I was working for like an investment firm, and I, decided that like, do you know what? Like, it's not that I dislike the job, it's not a, anti-rat race type thing or whatever. There's lots of plenty of good stuff in that part of the world, obviously. And it just wasn't for me. It was, I wanted to do something different. And that's when I decided to go on a different route, which led to me doing those master's degrees. So yeah, when I embarked on them, it was always a thought of what I want to do long term is coach golfers and help them with the mental side of the game.
Okay, yeah. And what would you say were the things that you really struggled with, that then obviously became like, probably, I'm guessing, part of the key fundamentals of the things you now teach, because it's relatability, I'm guessing, that comes 100%. Part of it. What were they, would you say? Maybe one or two of them?
Yes, it's a great question, because I think one of the big things I often say it to guys that I work with now is like, before I started working with golfers, you don't ever know if any other golfer thinks any differently to how you do. So you just think the way you approach golf is, surely that's the way everybody approaches golf, and it obviously isn't. There's people out there with so many different ways of approaching the game, so many different ways of thinking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But to your question there, I'd say, on the flip side of that, you've then got a lot of things which I focused on and managed to improve a lot in my own game, which I've been quite surprised as like how universal that thing is. So one of the things that I end up talking a lot to golfers about is hitting it great on the driving range, not hitting it great on the golf course. Not transferring your best golf from a practice situation to a pressure situation. And that was definitely something that, I found at times in the past is like, okay, I'm hitting it great on the range. Why isn't this happening on the course? And then the more I learned about why that happens and what you need to do, it helped me. And then actually it's more of a thing that golfers struggle with than I kind of ever realised, and has become something that I end up speaking to golfers of all different levels about a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm guessing the old adage of you only have a certain amount of shots that are going to be good throughout the day probably isn't the correct reason why you can't transfer it from the range to the course. So what is some of the key fundamentals as to why that happens then? Because often it's like, I hit it great on the range, bad on course. If it's bad on the range, I'm going to hit it well out on course. So what actually does happen there?
Yeah, so the big thing is making your practice prepare you for the challenges that you're going to face when you're out on the golf course. So, if we look at your typical range rat, your typical ball beater, the person that, gets a big bucket of balls, smash, 7 out of the 150, machine gunning them down there. We've all been there, including a younger version of myself. Like, we've all been there 100%. And if we compare that to the golf course, a tournament, got a card in your pocket, you got one chance to hit the shot, there's genuine consequence to hitting it left, hitting it right, whatever it might be. Those two situations are just worlds apart. So the big key, the big thing that underpins being able to transfer your best golf from a practice situation out to a tournament on-course situation is mimicking as many of the things that are there in tournaments in practice.
That makes sense. So what are some of the things that people could, if they're listening to this now, thinking, I'm that guy. I'm the guy who goes and hits 77 irons within the space of 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And what can they do in their practice sessions to better mimic that real life environment?
One of the big ones is just giving yourself one chance to hit a shot. And that sounds really simple, but if you've got two 150-yard markers on a driving range and you are hitting a 7-iron at the left-hand side one, if the next ball is a 7-iron at the right-hand side one, that's still a different problem that your brain needs to solve. That's still a little bit more like the golf course than just beating balls at the same target. And that's one of the big things is adding in like novelty and variation. So changing something for every single shot. And then the other big one is pressure and consequence. So if you can add pressure to shots that you hit at the driving range, then that's going to start to create a situation where you're practicing for something that's similar on the course. And a lot of people will think, oh, well, you know, I'm at the driving range. Like, how on earth am I ever going to feel pressure in that situation? But it's amazing how you really can do it. You know, you give someone a task of, or give yourself a task of, okay, I've got a driver, I've got a 30-yard gap. I need to hit 3 of these drivers in a row into this gap. If I miss, I've got to start again. When you get to that third one, you don't want to miss, right? Like, it's that you've got that element of consequence to it, and all of a sudden you're going to start talking to yourself like you're on the golf course. You're going to fall back on a routine if you've got one that's just like being on the golf course. And yeah, it creates that pressure where you sort of feel it, and you're like, oh yeah, that was a little bit like being on the course. So there are a couple of things that are a big part of being able to create that course-like situation in practice.
Yeah, because that's interesting. If people like, I see more people using that pressure situation on the putting green than what you do on the court. It's almost natural on a putting green that they'll set up drills, and there'll probably be pressure-related drills where they'll be trying to, you know, like you said, you've got to make these 3 putts, otherwise you start again.
Yeah.
And you see that all the time for those that do putting drills, which probably isn't equally. Percentage of golfers that go on practice putting is probably your 0 point, you know, whatever percent, but you see it more often. But on the driving range, like you said, very rare do you see somebody who's actually, you know, taking 1 minute between hitting from one shot to the next. I mean, that, if you've ever done that on a driving range, it's a great practice to literally set a timer and put a minute on the timer, because you're not hitting golf shots out in the course a minute apart, very rarely, other than a chip shot off the green and a putt maybe. So to do that really gets you like in that mindset, doesn't it? And I know pressure is one of your sort of key tenets as a coach. Yeah. What sort of led you down that path of, rather than just talking about, you know, the impact our mind has on the game, what made you hone in on pressure so much?
So it's a really great question. I must say, the kind of paths of, a bit like I was alluding to with the kind of idea of the transferring from the driving range to the golf course. Like, one thing that I think, like, if I look back throughout my kind of coaching career so far, I've always been very, very keen to listen to what it is that golfers like are struggling with the most, and actually like keep my eyes open to the things that are really helping them to improve more than maybe what I would just expect for them to improve. And, you know, going into, you know, okay, I want to, you know, help golfers with the mental side of the game, you think a lot of that's going to have, you know, something to do with how we talk to ourselves, being more positive, all that type of stuff, which is super helpful. It's a big part of it. But one thing that during the studies, which I wasn't necessarily going into it expecting to be so captivated by it, is the idea of like skill acquisition research. So just the way that we get better at anything. And kind of the light bulb went off for me when I realised that actually performing under pressure is a skill like any other, i.e. it's one that you can learn to be good at. You know, if there's going to be musicians who have great stage presence, and that's a skill. I'm sure comedians, the same type of thing, and that's their kind of performance. And with golfers or any sports person, that skill of being able to perform under pressure was something that really interested me. And then also that led me down the route of learning a lot more about how do we as human beings acquire skill? How do we get more skillful at anything? What's the process? What happens within your brain? What happens, you know, to your body as you get more skillful, and you know, what environments create that? And I think in answer to your question of, you know, what led me to zone in on that, is because that mixed with kind of my background of playing golf, I realised that actually it's the skill that gets neglected the most, i.e. focusing on being able to perform under pressure. But actually, if we are able to improve that part of it, everything else is going to improve with it, because to play well under pressure, we have to strike the ball well, we have to have good course management, we have to be patient, we have to be all of those things. So that mixed with the whole field of skill acquisition just kind of really, it's still got me in that rabbit hole, to be completely honest, and it's where, a lot of my stuff is kind of based upon.
That's interesting. So looking at like case studies for it, obviously we see a lot of it in the professional game. That's where the highest amount of pressure is going to come in, and next month we're probably going to see the most pressure-filled environment in New York.
Yes.
That maybe ever in the golfing landscape. When you look at someone now, I'm thinking Tommy Fleetwood. I think you're making me think Tommy Fleetwood.
Okay.
By the luscious locks. That's what it is, right? I can't help it. So Tommy Fleetwood, people have been scrutinising his performances as being, people are calling him that he's bottled it a little bit and everything like that. When you look at someone like Tommy Fleetwood, would you say that that's a pressure problem, or would you just say that's just a pure results problem? It's just almost, you know what I'm saying here? Because if someone performs can they still perform under pressure and not get the result, essentially?
I think there's so many layers to kind of the answer to that question. Like I think the big thing with Tommy Fleetwood is obviously he has won big tournaments, and I think it's 7 European Tour events that he's won, some of which very big events, Rolex Series, that kind of thing, and
Ryder Cup legend.
And I think from that, I think there's an element where sometimes narratives can get built, and then the narrative gets a little bit bigger than the truth a little bit. And if you've got a US commentator saying, here's a guy that's never won, it starts to create a good story. He then ends up being in some situations where maybe he doesn't quite get it done, where he's got a great chance to get it done. And then, the story kind of builds and builds. I kind of think what I often look at with Tommy Fleetwood, and, this is speaking of as a fan of Tommy Fleetwood as well. And I think his route over to the PGA Tour was via top 50 in the world. So he's straight in to the biggest events, basically. He's never been over there playing the 3M Open and the John Deere to kind of try and get his status to then kind of get to that. He did that on the European Tour. And so I think you go straight into the best fields. Naturally, that's hard to win because the best players are there. He's also got a game that suits very difficult golf courses. He's a ball striker, so his driving stats are great, his irons are great. The areas where he tends to lose strokes, if he does, is going to be putting. I think his chipping's quite strong as well, but putting. So therefore, his game doesn't lend itself to a kind of birdie fest type golf course. So, and typically those golf courses that suit him are going to be your US Open venues, as they're, the elevated events they have now over there. They're going to be the venues that his game suits, which naturally, again, he's going straight into the biggest events. He's playing the hardest golf courses, and his game will shine at the ones where you've got the biggest names for the biggest trophies. And so I always think if you compare his profile to, I'm just going to pick a random person that's won a few times on the PGA Tour, someone like JT Poston. He's somebody who is a birdie machine, phenomenal golfer, but if we look at the stats, not as strong a golfer as Tommy Fleetwood, but his statistical profile leads to wins in tournaments that are more birdie fest, which maybe the fields are slightly weaker. So don't get me wrong, is there a clutch thing there? I don't know. I've never spoken to JT Poston or kind of know him on that level to say, he's someone that might go, he's just so clutch and that's why he's kind of done this or whatever. But I think, again, with the layers of this, there's some explanation in there with all of those factors all combining together to sort of be as much an anomaly mixed with the odd roll of the dice not going his way and a couple of bad days here and there that becomes a big story of the man can't win.
Yeah, I think I think that's a perfect summary of what is happening with Tommy, because like you said before, he's won plenty of times, he knows how to win, but like you said, that narrative has been formed. There's probably a little bit of that he carries with him. These guys aren't, they come under a lot. Exactly. Every interview, he knows what's coming at the end of that. The last on the 72nd hole, he knows what's coming next. He didn't do it again, and that's got to be so tough to deal with mentally. The pressure that comes with that as well, and like you said, it's unfortunate because it builds and builds and builds. It's like the Rory situation, isn't it, with the Masters? It was. I mean, that must have been for you. I mean, for everyone watching, that was. I think I can't think of a better Masters tournament. I think Tiger obviously winning. Yeah, that was amazing, but it was kind of done like within 3 or 4 holes before the finish. You kind of knew Tiger had it wrapped up, but that playoff with Justin Rose, I bet you were watching that just going like, wow, I'm going to write a paper on this. This is because
I don't think I've ever been as emotionally invested in a sporting event as that one. I think even if England were about to win the World Cup final, I think it's it still exceeds that. Watching Rory McIlroy trying to win the Masters after that many years, it was crazy. Exactly like you said, it's what pressure and expectation and elite skill on arguably the best golf course in the planet can kind of come together and be. And then, Justin Rose playing his part in that as well, finishing the way he did to kind of push it that way. Yeah, it was it had everything, right?
I mean, you want to talk mentally tough, like Justin Rose, probably the same as everyone else wanted to see Rory win that tournament because they're friends. Like, everyone was rooting for Rory, and then he finds himself in a situation because he's so unbelievably clutch to shoot what he did on the last. I think, would he shoot a 64 or something like that on the last?
Something like that. He made a lot of birdies on the back nine. I know that. It
was crazy, and then watching Rory, I can't get this image out of my head to this day. Everyone has the image of him walking after he won, and just their head in their hands, just can't believe it when he wins. For me, it was on the 17th hole when he made the birdie. And he's got a little wait on the 18th, so that he decides to stay on the 17th green and try and digest an oak bar, which appeared at that moment in time to be made of cement, the way that thing was going down. Would you say that was 100% a sort of a mental exercise in that moment, to either take him out of the moment or to give him time to process what just happened? Watching that as somebody that's not clued up on those sort of things, that's kind of what I saw. Is that similar to what you saw?
Yeah, I mean, again, these things are so hard to sort of look at and say that's the reason that person, did that thing. So it's tough. He's obviously got Bryson in his group. He obviously just wants a bit of space. I think there's probably an element of, I just want to get to the tee and it be some semblance of just the normal cadence of, okay, where's the target? What's the shot? What am I trying to do here? Like that kind of thing. I'd definitely say there's definitely some of that to it there. But yeah, I think it's a tough one to say exactly what he was thinking. But I think, in that moment, what the best in the world try to do is try to make everything as routine as possible, and routine in the sense of just like, if I can go through my normal steps to step into this shot, then I'm going to be most comfortable. And when we often see big errors happen, I often think of, you had Colin Montgomery, who could have won the US Open, winged foot. He had a big wait for Mickelson messing around in the trees up the left-hand side and changed clubs a couple of times and ends up pulling it into the bunker. And you think, if he could have walked straight in and hit it, could it have been a different story? Could it have been different? So yeah, I think trying to keep it as routine as possible would be my guess as to what he was trying to do there.
That's interesting. And talking of routine, we spoke about it briefly earlier, obviously with the range session, and I think you definitely use the words if somebody has a pre-shot routine, which sort of tells me everything that I need to know about what you probably spend a lot of time on with sort of pupils when it comes to this, is having that pre-shot routine. What would you say are some of like the key things that people can work into a pre-shot routine? Is there a specific amount of time that works best for a pre-shot routine? What's your thoughts on that?
We see wildly different routines. So it's not something that we can look at and go, we just do this, we do this, we do this, we do this, and then we're kind of done. It's not kind of a one-size-fits-all type thing. But what we do have is there's some commonalities between different golfers. So for me, there's three really, really key things that, if we stood on a tee at Wentworth, watched the whole field come through, we're going to see every player do these three things. And that's pick a really specific target. So a branch, not a tree, an edge of a bunker, not the left-hand side, be really specific. Then they're going to visualize the shot. They're going to think about how it's going to fly, factoring in wind and all of that type of thing. And then they're going to be very committed to that shot. They're going to be given 100% at the shot that they've chosen. And for me, if we want to build a really strong pre-shot routine, when I'm helping guys to build a strong pre-shot routine, it's all about finding what those three things look like for you. So what does it look like to pick a target? What does it look like to visualize? What does it look like to fully commit? And it's a great question what you said there about the amount of time it takes, because often what people, they'll show, here's Tiger Woods with, there was a famous video, like one early on the front nine and one on the 17th or 18th tee at the Masters. Here's him doing his routine both times, and you can basically put them over the top of each other and they're exactly the same. And it's not that he's doing that to time. It's not like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's just that the things he does are the same each time in his head. So therefore it ends up taking the same amount of time. So if you nail down picking targets, visualizing the shot, committing to the shot, once that becomes automatic, once you've used it enough and you make it automatic by using it as much as possible in practice and in casual rounds and in as many situations as possible, you'll find that actually your routine just becomes just incredibly similar in length of time and actually what it looks like each time.
That's part of the skill acquisition that you were talking of earlier. I'm guessing the fact that if you're doing that not just on the course, which is probably what people are going to do, they'll get this pre-shot routine, they'll probably take even longer than what they would normally because it gives that professional vibe when they're on the course. But actually you can tell a player who has a pre-shot routine because it's completely like it's their chance to empty their mind almost of everything, and you just see that there's this almost nonchalant way they go about it, and then they do it, and that comes from doing that in practice as well. So we kind of want to make it what we'd call unconscious. We want it to be a little bit like if you're someone that drives a car, you get in the car and you look over your left shoulder to reverse without even realizing that you're looking. If you've ever hurt your neck or your back, there's one way to kind of give yourself a quick shoot of pain by getting in a car, turning as if you're kind of fully fit because it's completely automatic, and then having that shooting of pain going down your neck because you didn't realize that's what you did. And that's the level of automaticness that we want to get a pre-shot routine to. And the way that we do that, again, just like driving a car, is by doing it a lot in practice. So you said there about kind of having it to kind of clear your mind, and it's definitely that. It's definitely a useful tool for pushing away distractions and getting things that could be taking your attention out of your mind. But the way we do that is by getting really, really focused on the things that are going to really help us to hit a good shot. So thinking about the exact spot we want to leave the ball, thinking about exactly where it needs to start, how it needs to fly. And you mentioned skill acquisition there. Being able to do all of those things is a skill. Being able to get to a golf ball, judge the wind, consider where it needs to start, where it needs to pitch, what it's going to do when it lands on the ground, what the lie the ball is in is going to do to the ball,
what the shot that you're trying to leave yourself is, and then going in there to then execute. I mean, there's multiple skills in that, which is exactly why it's so important to do it as much as possible in practice and in casual rounds. You know, even with rounds, friends, 9 holes in the evening, you know, nice sunny evening, nothing on the line. For me, I say to guys that I coach, that is a fantastic opportunity to practice using your pre-shot routine. You can not care what you shoot. You can be there to just relax, have a chat. But 15 seconds before, 15 seconds after, if you're going, right, what's the lie going to do? What's the wind? How's it going to land? Where do I want to leave this? You're making a really good use of that time for such a small change to what you'd be doing, just strolling around and having a very casual game.
Yeah, exactly. And to anyone listening whose friends like moan at them for having like a pre-shot routine because it takes too long, well, it's a lot faster than chunking one and having to hit another shot straight afterwards. So just ignore them. Unless you're taking 3 minutes, then, you know.
Exactly. Like if I think in my experience, once you nail a pre-shot routine, then you can actually be just as fast, if not faster, than somebody who doesn't have one, because it's the same thing every single. Once it's your go, you're just in. Right, I've got my target. I'm in the shot, and off I go. And then obviously, as you say, there it's 72 routines is quicker than 112 non-routines.
Yeah, just a bit. So this is a subject I'm quite interested in, and I don't know whether I'm guessing the qualifications you had probably covered this as well, to do with sort of brain health. For golfers, because it's probably quite low-hanging fruit, because it's a game we can play well into our 80s and 90s if obviously our bodies hold up enough to do that. That's the beauty of golf, and you can still compete with a 20-year-old being that age. But obviously something that does decline a lot, and some people view as slightly being out of control, and obviously there's extenuating circumstances which can obviously happen with that, with illness and everything like that. Is there any like low-hanging fruit that we can work on as far as when it comes to brain health, both making sure that we're cognitively prepared with maybe little things we can do in our everyday life, and also through like nutrition and other things like that?
So by brain health, do you mean in the sense of preventing sort of onset diseases, or in the sense of like mental health?
Let's go with just as far as when it comes to mental health and sort of everyday cognition. So at the moment, maybe if we can, we'll talk about when it comes to onset diseases. I know that can be a difficult subject because there's obviously some which can be hereditary based and everything like that. Yeah. But
for clarification, that side of things, you know, that's not in my field at all. I just wanted to kind of just clarify what kind of you were referring to.
All good. All good. We won't do that. I'd say if anyone, you know, you can look it up, you can try and do everything you can to preserve your brain health for as long as you can through whatever forms, you know, natural forms, whatever it may be. That's a good line for people to go down privately and do. But let's just talk about when it comes to your mental health side of things, which is something which is finally being probably addressed a lot more, especially when it comes to males.
Definitely.
When it comes to mental health, and what we don't want to see is somebody obviously having that mental sort of blow up happening on the golf course, because that can be quite a sad thing as well. So what's some quite low hanging fruit that people can maybe do to help them with that side of things?
Yeah, I think what's great about golf is it's a good excuse for blokes to spend time with their mates that isn't just drinking, gambling and watching football. Mm-hmm. Like, and so it's a good opportunity for socialization, like a good opportunity to like spend time with friends, and those things are so important when it comes to mental health. You know, you look at COVID, you know, you look at lockdowns, one of the biggest side effects was, you know, effects on mental health, because everybody was so isolated and they didn't get the opportunity to spend time not only outside but outside with friends. And I think just built into golf is that, and it's a good excuse to get out and see friends. So I think that's a massive one. Like, you know, I think with mental health issues that people suffer, there's no one size fits all. It's like, oh, you just need to talk, or you just need to do this, or you just need to do that. Everybody's situation is individual to them. It's caused by many, many different things: medical, non-medical, social, non-social. All these different things. So the specific thing that people need to do is going to be specific to them, and that kind of thing generally is something that you would always get a lot from speaking to a therapist about, because it can help you understand what it is that you're struggling with, because as the saying goes, it's really hard to read the label from the inside of the bottle. So, on that front, what, as in low-hanging fruit, is there for people to kind of have that is golf related to kind of help them in those situations? It depends, but golf on the whole is phenomenal for overall mental health and overall general health, because of all of the reasons that I mentioned there at the start, as well as some competitiveness and some actually, really, really stressing and using the brain for something that is challenging and difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I think I came from playing with the same group of friends. I came from playing football with them regularly to now us all pretty much moving over. Our bodies are giving out, just playing golf together. And the difference between basically spending an hour and a half, 2 hours shouting at each other, to spending an hour and a half, spending 4 hours, and a half hours, whatever it may be, talking to each other, still having that banter, still having, we'll try and goad each other a little bit and stuff like that. But equally, you're hearing good shot, you're hearing like, so how you doing, mate? How's the family? You've got all these things going on, which just don't happen. I can't think of many other sports that you can play recreationally where you generally have the time during the activity to check in on each other, making sure you're okay. And it's amazing to also think, not amazing to think, but also think, if you're going out with people, and I don't know if you agree on this or not, or whether it actually is quite interesting, because could this be an internalisation point where you actually start to look at yourself? If you go out and don't enjoy your time with a group, it's then the point of recognising, okay, is this me? Am I causing this negative atmosphere through whatever I'm doing? Or is it the case that actually I maybe need to find a different group to go out with, because I don't enjoy it as much as I do when I go with said group instead? So is there that element of making sure that we're not causing the bad vibes?
Yeah. To your first point there about kind of spending time during the activity, kind of talking to others and stuff. Yeah, that I'll often say it to friends, like when we're playing, like, what if we didn't play golf, like what would we do? Like, as in what social thing could you do as a group at 8:10 on a Saturday morning, week after week? Like it'd be a struggle to find something that you could fill that time with. With kind of what you said there, like, I think you get different people, don't you, that have very, very different preferences to, some people like to play in their 4-ball every week and will happily do that for the next 30 years. And then there's going to be others that want to play with different people, that like to challenge themselves. I've always enjoyed playing tournament golf because I've quite liked going into a situation where you're literally drawn with two guys you don't know. You go out there, some guys are chatty, some aren't. Sometimes I'm a bit chattier or not chatty at all during a tournament. It just depends on how you kind of feel. And it's just a different environment. It kind of creates these different challenges. Okay, I'm on a different golf course with people I don't know, with a card in my pocket, with the pressure on. For me, that's fun. To someone else, that's the worst way they could possibly ever spend their weekend, and they just want to stay in that 4-ball. So I think it just kind of comes down to kind of knowing ourselves and knowing what we want. And, with the kind of, if it's a negative situation in a group that you're in, like obviously that could be a like a kind of interpersonal thing where, you know, if it's people getting along, not getting along, that kind of thing, or it could just be, you know, some competition that's maybe got a little bit too serious or something like that. But again, yeah, it's got to be totally individual to kind of work out what the cause of that is, and then do whatever's needed.
I guess if it gets a bit spicy, then there's your pressurised situation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's to work on. That's what it's all been leading towards. So what would you? Actually, do you know what? I'm going to leave that for a minute. I want to talk about a little bit more about you, Andy, if that's all right.
Okay.
If we could talk about, because we've covered quite a lot of the parts of the cognitive part of the game, and how people. We'll return back to that. I just want to leave people at the end with maybe 5 points that they could work on. But as far as your golf, what current sort of, you know, what's your current handicap? You said you're playing a lot of competitive golf. Where are you at with all that?
So currently off +1.
Nice.
Played a fair bit of competitive golf this year, like, you know, around obviously coaching. The thing that I struggle to fit in as much these days from like an amateur tournament type of schedule type thing is getting to places, practice rounds, you know, the lead up. It's kind of, even if it's a 1 day or a 2 day 36 hole event, or, you know, 54 hole event, or whatever it might be, it's the getting over for a practice round, the thing leading up to it, that means it ends up taking, you know, at least a part of, say, like 5-6 days of your diary. So I do struggle to fit in as much competitive golf as I would like these days, but I still manage to fit a decent amount in this year, definitely more than I have in the last couple, which has been nice. It's given me a bit more of an incentive to practice, work on my own game, you know, just really get down there and actually follow some of my own practice plans, do some of my own practice games and that type of thing.
Yeah, writing the plans but not actually getting to execute them can't be much fun, can it? So it's good to get to it. And what kind of events are you entering? Are you entering sort of local amateur events? Have you tried entering a couple of the sort of pro events where you can enter as an amateur? What sort of?
Yeah, I played like a kind of county championship this year. Local to me, you know, club championship, and then a few other things at kind of county like level of competition. Nothing higher than that these days. I've never, do you know what? Even when I was playing a lot of competitive stuff, like amateur wise, I just was never really that kind of enticed by entering these kind of pro events where you can enter as an amateur. I kind of think, in amateur golf, you've actually got quite a lot of really good opportunities to play in some great competitions around great golf courses against great fields. So that's the kind of stuff that I've always stuck to, and it's always been an aside to either studying, coaching, you know, whatever else. It's never kind of been a kind of full-time thing where I've kind of been like, right, I am a full-time golfer. It's my full-time job. So again, with that, you know, a pro tournament is more likely to be, you know, say it's 54 holes, it would be a 3-day tournament, whereas you play in an amateur event that's 36 holes, they're quite often 1 day. So obviously it fits a lot better into a schedule. Yeah.
And I also see, like, I don't know if this is across the board, a very limited sort of sample size, but I went and attended the Clutch Pro Tour event that was near me at the weekend, and there was one amateur that made the cut. And towards the end, it was the last day of the event, and he was obviously one of the first groups to come in, so he was towards the bottom of the leaderboard after the cut. And he looked really. He was young. I think he was 19 years old, this lad, and he'd made the cut. Only amateur to do it. He was playing with some real, like, they striped the ball. These guys. He was unbelievable. Yeah. And he came in looking quite dejected, and I didn't get a chance to sort of say to him, like, you know, you're like the only amateur to make the cut. Like, you've done unbelievably well in these, like, boiling hot conditions as well. It was warm, and he looked dejected. And you wonder if, I don't know if that's the case across the board, that because of the level that these guys get to practice and the fact that they're doing this full time, basically, it's their career. The amateur golfer coming in can feel quite dejected, despite the fact they've performed really well, which I'm guessing is less likely to happen if you go and play an amateur event, essentially, and perform well. Potentially.
I mean, you know, feeling dejected walking off, I mean, it could have just been something as simple as, you know, how his round had gone, or particular shots, or, you know, maybe, you know, because there is a big crossover in the amateur and the pro game. You know, the best, like the guys that are going to go and play in the Walker Cup, or, you know, the guys that have recently played in the home internationals, you know, for England, or, you know, that kind of thing, like, those guys are a lot better than a lot of people that play on some of these pro tours. You know, it's not like in other sports where it's sort of amateur to a point and then it goes over to pro and it's like a sort of continual thing there. There is an overlap with, you know, how pro and amateur golf has been in kind of history, and you know, some of the, obviously, you know, you win the US Amateur as the guy did yesterday, and you're in 3 of the majors, which, you know, that you don't get that for a lot of pro tournaments that kind of exist. So, you know, it may be that, I don't know who this amateur is, it may be that actually the level of his golf was just very high, and you're just looking at somebody that, you know, is a very good golfer. His expectations were at a certain point and he was just a little bit kind of disappointed with the way that day had gone, however that was. And yeah, so not sure exactly on that kind of thing, but yeah, there's definitely a kind of crossover where some amateur golfers will be able to compete at a very good level in pro events. I mean, you even see it on the PGA Tour at times.
Yeah. It's probably just me like looking at it, and I think he walked off after like a level par, like last day, and I'm like, man, like that would be awesome. Like I'd be buzzing, you know. Like that's just me as a 10 handicapper, just wishing for that round to come.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I think that alludes to a kind of a big point with the mental game. Like I think sometimes we can view the mental game as we need to be really calm, we need to be really placid, we need to be really chilled, we need to be really accepting, like really just everything's very, 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 very like steady. Whereas actually we look at the top of the game and there's guys who are the furthest thing from that. You know, John Rahm, you know, people of Tyrrell Hatton is a great example, of that caliber. They're world class golfers. They show a lot of emotion, they show anger, they show frustration, they walk off plenty of rounds, you know, amped up, frustrated, and actually, if we were to take all of that away, there's probably a chance that you lose some of the passion and you actually lose some of the drive to work hard, the drive to get better. You know, if they're walking off after a mediocre round and go, no, it's okay, you know, I did fine today, I hit some nice shots, that's okay, I'm just going to go home and chill. Whereas if they're walking off frustrated, dejected, you know, maybe you don't want to be sitting next to them at that point, but the practice that they then go and do, the things they then go and work on, the things they then go and obsess over, actually that can be a big driver of improvement. So, you know, sometimes when we look at people walking off in a kind of frustrated way, actually that's part of the process of just getting good.
Is that what makes Scotty Scheffler such a sort of difficult case study in many ways? Because the way he just level, you know, a lot through the thing, and I know that is something that more recently he's sort of done. I know through his college days he was known as being a fiery character, and you see it in brief moments. You see it at the US International, help me out here, Andy, what's the name?
One of the majors,
President's Cup, the President's
right.
Cup. You see then his sort of fiery side coming out a little bit more. But when you see him like at the weekend, when he just Bobby McIntyre basically dismantled a little bit himself, but the way Scotty just again shot that 4 under round, just level the whole time. I think amateurs, like you said, look at that and think, right, I need to be him now, like when I go out there. But like you were just saying, that's not for everyone, is it?
I think with Scotty Scheffler, like he's rather than being like placid, I would say he's just introverted. He's somebody that's clearly not the kind of in your face, brash, high-fiving everybody, wants to talk to everybody all the time, you know, insert whoever that person is, like that's the more extroverted kind of, you know, out there type personality. Whereas I think, you know, in my opinion, I think there's still a lot of fieriness there. You know, there was a particular range session. It was at one of the majors where he's on the range talking to his coach, and he's, you know, really kind of passionate, really passionate. And, you know, look, you're the world number one. You're in a major. It means a lot. So I think there is a lot of fire and intensity there, I think. And I think, you know, he talks a lot about how much he just loves the process of practicing and just going out there and just trying to get better that day, and again and again and again. And I think, you know, there's that really strong drive there that you see come out at times when things don't quite go his way. that you really see the passion and intensity that he has. But obviously when you're winning so many events, then obviously a lot of them are serene, and he literally is just in a situation now where he's obviously, you know, so comfortable in and around a lead that he can seem like he's coasting just because, you know, he's incredibly highly skilled, he's a world-class player, and he's just able to kind of, you know, do what he does in that situation and play as if, you know, a way many others would if they were in, you know, the 15th final group rather than the final group all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess, like, in our era of golf, Tiger basically personified that winning sort of mental side of the game, and there's so many stories obviously of how he was brought up and how his dad would, you know, do all these things to try and distract him when he was practicing, you know, jangling like coins in his pocket, throwing something at him like just as he's about to swing and stuff like that. And obviously people aren't going to want to do those things with their kids in this day and age. Like, that's kind of not those sort of things are viewed as a bit of a bullying tactic now, and however well intentioned they may have been, you know, trying to set him up for success. When it comes to junior golfers, I don't know if you work with a lot of junior golfers and things like that, what would you say? Because I've got a young lad who he's only 4, but he loves golf. And I can see it. It's literally a dream come true for me that he just loves it, and I now can envision all these golf trips together. And
100%.
I've got a golfing partner for life, which is great. And I now am coming towards that difficult process of, you know, preparing him for, you know, 5-6 years time when he's big enough, old enough to go out on a course. And what would you say are some tips that parents could have for their young ones on how to help them with a difficult game that is golf?
Yeah, I love that question. Firstly, with Tiger Woods, it is such a fascinating case study of skill acquisition, because, you know, he is somebody that his ability to keep getting better when others weren't keeping up with him is one of the most amazing things in any sport. You know, so often you see someone reach the top and sort of go, what now? Whereas he just sped off into the distance, and, you know, like you say, it was, as our years growing up, was just, Tiger Woods is winning again, winning by loads, you know, so many highlight reel moments, amazing tournaments, you know, all that type of stuff. And the story with his dad is obviously really, really told a lot, and his dad obviously played an enormous part, was obviously a great golfer himself, and I think it was the Air Force or the Navy course that he grew up at, you know, all of that was a massive part of Tiger Woods' his upbringing. But he also talks a lot about his mother as well, which is almost kind of like the yin and the yang of kind of, obviously his dad was this kind of very intense, very kind of like push person, whereas in a lot of speeches, you know, he had the Hall of Fame speech that he did and spoke a lot about his mother and talking about the kind of caring side that he got there. So it's almost like, you know, and this is an element of just kind of, you know, I'm not speaking directly to these people to sort of say, yeah, this is exactly what happened. But, you know, you've got almost the best of both worlds there. You've got someone pushing you super hard, and then someone that's also there to kind of give the very empathetic, very, very caring side, which is, you know, two sides of it. You said about the parenting question, which is a great question, because I think, you know, obviously as parents, like, a parent will have a big effect on a child's enjoyment of the game, a big effect on their opportunity to play the game, a big effect on them being exposed to the game, you know, all that type of stuff. The biggest thing for me is, you know, if you look at all of the research into, you know, child development in sport, enjoyment is a massive part, because without enjoyment you don't have motivation, and without motivation you can't hold someone hostage to practice 10 hours a day. But if they love it, you drop them off at 8 a.m. and they'll be annoyed that they've got to leave at 7 p.m. So you get the enjoyment part of it right, and then the motivation will be there, which will mean the level of practice without a child even realising they're practicing will be there. Part of that then a social environment. So if a child loves golf, there's a place they can go to play golf, and there's other juniors there. That's also another massive part of motivation is having like an opportunity for kind of community and a social environment. And then just the opportunity to try and just get good at something. And I say that's deliberately in that way because sometimes a parent can be like, I want to do what's best for my child, so I'm going to get them a lesson with a golf coach every single Saturday for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. Whereas what that risks is turning golf into school and it being like, oh, okay, I've got another lesson. Okay, now I'm being told to grip it this way and I'm being told to do this. Whereas if a child, it's almost like we want them to have the freedom to kind of discover and experiment and try and hit flop shots over bushes and try and hit slices and then try and hit hooks without, you know, being given the shopping list of you've got to grip it like this, you've got to stand like this, your shoulders have got to do this from a young age. And then if you can just kind of, you know, be almost the bumpers on the bowling alley to just kind of keep things on the track and, you know, some coaching at the right moment could be a good thing depending on how they develop and that kind of thing. And I think all of that is a downstream effect of helping a child to enjoy golf. You know, when they're done, if they want to just play 3 holes in a par 3 course and that's all they want to do, making them play 9 probably means I don't want to play 3 next time. You know, it's just a case of, you know, just the thing that they enjoy. And then just if there's an opportunity for, you know, somewhere that there's a, you know, a kids club or a place where there's a lot of other juniors, that's a really, really, really good thing too.
Yeah, it's awesome advice. I mean, I heard Podrick Harrington talking about it. I don't know if you've seen that interview as well, where he basically said, you know, I think it was when his son had played in an event that he was playing in or had caddied for him or there was something going on, and they said to him, you know, what was your secret for getting involved in the game? And he's like, to be kid-like with them, essentially. You know, when we played, if they want to throw a ball into a hole, let them throw it into the hole. If they, you know, if they want to throw a couple of balls out on the range, not to go, hey, I paid for those, you know, and become this sort of tyrant on the range because you're focused on your game and this sort of self-importance and this is what the range session is. And he basically said that, you know, one of the key points from it that I took from it as well, I think I heard Rick Shields talking about this with his kids as well. When you take them to the range, stop whilst they're enjoying it. So if that means they've hit 30 balls and you can see them sort of flagging and you know they're probably going to want to finish the 50 because you bought them for them because, you know, they're being kind, to just go, you done? Yeah, I'm done. And then go and get a chocolate bar with them. Go and get something to drink, spend time with them, and make golf like this joyous thing rather than this thing that is a task that you have to fulfill. That can come later on. If they want to take the game more seriously later on, they'll do that on their own, like just the same as what we did. Yeah. And we started going for more, you know, trying to practice more serious, getting a coach, whatever it may be. We always have to wait for them to ask for those things, which as a parent's really difficult, right? Because you want to sort of implement all the fundamentals which are going to help them, but it's sort of taking a step back and realising that this is a 80, 90-year sport potentially for them. There's time. And
also, just simply with the technique side of it, with the coach type thing, like you get, if Scotty Scheffler or Jim Furyk end up with a coach too soon, you've probably never heard of him.
Yeah, spot on. I literally had I've got some friends at the moment that are getting so wrapped up in their takeaway, and they're a bit older, but they're getting so wrapped up in their takeaway, and every time I'm just like, Scotty Scheffler, mate. Like no one would pull you aside and say, is this guy world number one based on the way his swing looks on the telly? But yeah, that guy every time is just an elite ball striker because he's worked out his own way, including some fundamentals that are clearly there. But to get that ball as close to the hole as where he's driving it as many times as you can, and you only do that through practice and your own swing DNA essentially as well, and recognising that.
100%. You know, there's a, you know, to use a, you know, a sports psychology term, there's a term called discovery learning. So it's not that technique doesn't matter, or, you know, just go out there, swing your swing, visualise it, it'll all be fine. You know, no, it's none of that. But it's, if we look at the idea of discovery learning, it's the idea that we get good at something by integrating with it and doing the thing and experimenting and getting something wrong and trying again. You know, how do we learn how to ride a bike? You know, you sort of fall off a few times. You know, you have the help of some stabilizers, but you know, you still need, you know, to kind of have that element of just, you're on that bike, once the stabilizer are off, you've got to learn how to do it. And we look at any skill, it's the way that we develop it is just by really engaging with it. And so if we take that approach to hitting a golf ball, then if we look at kids as an example, especially at that age where, you know, their brains are really, you know, plastic, they're very malleable, you know, there's a lot of plasticity, they're gonna pick things up very, very fast at that point. And that comes from, okay, here's a golf ball, try and hit it as far as you can, try and hit it as high as you can, try and hit it, you know, into that basket over there, try and get this club off the ground, you know, whatever it might be at an early age. And then as they get better and better, it's like, right, okay, you know, rather than, okay, we're going to learn today how to hit a flop shot by learning that you need your left foot here, your right foot here, your right knee here, your right shoulder here. It's like, okay, here's a ball one side of a bunker, there's a flag the other side of the bunker. Let's try and work out through experimentation how to produce that result. And what the studies on discovery learning show is that the original gaining of the skill takes a little bit longer, which makes sense because we're not being given the answer at the start. So it takes us a while to work that thing out. But when we do, or when a person that's using discovery learning as a method does, the skill becomes very sticky. It's a genuine skill that's been built that then sticks around, and the performance in pressure situations is then better. So, and if we think about it, it's because that person's had to actually really work out the real solution to that problem, and, you know, work hard for it. They've had to really use their brain, it's stressed their brain, rather than just be given it at the start, use it quickly, and then it's kind of not really become something that is embedded, that's kind of gone into their long-term working memory. And that's the real benefit of that discovery learning. And then when a coach comes in, there's another term within the sports psychology kind of research where they call it guided discovery. So it's like a coach, and I use a lot of this style of coaching in my one-to-one coaching, is set up a situation that's going to help somebody to discover what it is that they need to do to produce an outcome, but still let them go through that process where they're having to use their brain, they're having to attempt something, maybe fail a little bit, try something else, because then that really creates that kind of sticky skill development. And that will link so much into just as kids, allowing them to mess around, to experiment, to play, basically.
That's brilliant, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's that fluctuation between kids have a lot more time on their hands as well, which helps with that discovery-based learning, because they literally have all the time in the world to practice and to do everything. Whereas as adults, we get a little bit regimented with, we've got an hour to sort out my driver this week. So you know, that's where that guided learning helps, and that's where finding, I guess, a coach that's right for you as well, because it's finding that coach that will lead you down that path, but not necessarily sort of like ram it down your throat with exactly what you need to do, which is probably it doesn't seem as much of a problem anymore, but it maybe was a bit of a problem in the past when people were focused on just pure swing aesthetics.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there is there at times, and you know, some golfers that go out there and are very intent on getting as much kind of technical information as possible. So, you know, it can be tough for a coach to kind of re-educate in that situation and kind of, you know, oh no, what you don't need is any of this technical information. Let's you know, go and do this. But I think to the point there that you said, I think it's probably something that you've seen in the past is you get this moment where somebody maybe improves their game quite a lot with an unorthodox golf swing, and then they decide, I'm going to start taking this seriously. I'm going to start practicing properly. And what that means, or what they're referring to, is I'm going to go and see a coach. I'm going to break my swing down into 35 different pieces, and I'm going to work on it until on a camera it looks like nice straight lines. And so often, because I often have this golfer like in front of me maybe 6 or 12 months later than this point, where they say, my golf swing looks so good on camera. I'm ripping it at the range. I'm hitting it so good. You know, when I flush it, my ball speed's up this much. But I was a 7 handicap and I'm up to 11 because they've taken that focus away from actually playing golf, from doing the thing that, you know, yes, it's unorthodox, but actually it was probably quite functional, versus, and then gone to kind of, okay, I need to make this kind of textbook and pretty lines and looks like an Instagram backswing. And yeah, it's definitely something that happens. And I think advice to people that have unorthodox golf swings would be, look, you can absolutely get coaching, but, you know, make sure that the thing that you're doing is having a real impact on the way you hit the golf ball. You know, will the numbers that matter on a TrackMan change from me making this change, or will my backswing just look better on camera? It's kind of, you know, it's a subtle difference as to what's going to help and what maybe is just going to be wasted time and quite a lot of frustration.
Yeah, exactly. Like to save people from as much of that as possible. I guess to sort of wrap up the conversation, Andy, I'm going to be a little bit selfish, and I'm going to use myself as the guinea pig here. I'm on a mission to get from 10 to 5.
Okay.
In as short a space as possible. I sort of set a target by the end of the year. I was sort of inspired. I had Joshua Coates on, and he went from shooting 127 to a scratch golfer in 6 years. So I thought, well, I'm not shooting 127, so I'm going to condense that time down even more and try and get down to 5, which I think nice. I can do. I think it's possible. And what gave me hope was I had a back. I don't need to talk about the front line, but I had a level par back 9 the other day on like
nice.
a relatively sort of average golf course, but you know, difficulty level wasn't super low, so it was Seaford Head near where I live, which I played, and it was level par, and that sort of filled me with confidence of like, okay, the game is there sometimes, but how do I do it more consistently? So what would you say are 5 tips that you would give to do with the mental side of the game, obviously, when it, you know, whether that comes to practice or maybe just on course would be probably better, unless you think the practice parts. I'll let you lead. I'm not going to tell you the premise to it, but what would say 5 tips that would help me and obviously others listening as well with that sort of scenario?
Number 1 is definitely practice, and it's, you know, if you want to go from a 10 to a 5, I look at it and go, right, okay, let's imagine you're a 10 handicap marathon runner. So you can run a marathon in, you know, 4 hours. I'm just going to make up numbers here. I don't really know the relevance of this. 4 hours and 6 minutes is your record marathon. If you want to knock 20 minutes off that marathon or 15 minutes off that marathon and run it in, you know, 3 hours 50 or whatever it is, then one of the things you're going to need to do is lots of training, lots of runs that are structured in the right way to be able to build the aerobic ability to produce that outcome. And in golf, if we want to increase our skill level, it's the same formula. We need to train, which is, you know, the practice part, and train in the right way so that it instigates an increase in skill, and then leads to sort of lower scores and better performance on the course. So I would say, if you want to halve your handicap 10 to 5, I'd say 2 to 3 practice sessions a week, and they would be sort of a 60-40 split between long game and short game. So 60% sort of range stuff, 40% short game and putting.
Okay, that's a good tip. I like the first one. I'll take that.
Nice.
Where are we going next?
Second would be just get really, really hot on course strategy. So if you lose a golf ball, that's 2 shots. If you can average 1 less lost, and I don't know if you're someone that, you know, this may be the lost ball thing might apply to someone who's a really long hitter that's like not so straight. You know, if somebody doesn't lose any golf balls, then the strategy might be elsewhere. But if one of the lowest hanging fruits at all times is finding any shots that are being wasted through strategic errors. So keeping the ball in play, playing boring golf, avoiding short-sided misses, and that might mean playing to the whole other side of the green rather than chasing the pin. But yeah, keeping your strategy a really good spot would be my second bit of advice.
I like it. I like those things. When it comes to the practice, to go back on the practice point again, I've had this recent thing where I decided to. I was a bit inspired by I don't know if you've seen him, but Nap GPT on Instagram.
Right? No, I've not seen him.
It's a brilliant account. It's a guy who basically loves Jake Knapp and wants his swing. He's getting back to a guy who's seen somebody swing and wants it, but he's done it in a very good way. He's basically input everything into ChatGPT of basically make me look like Jake Knapp.
Right,
when I'm out there, right? And he's going through this process of ChatGPT basically giving him these lists of things, and it's very in depth, and he's sort of trying to take advantage of ChatGPT as it gets more and more sort of complex by the day. And it sort of inspired me to like, okay, well, I'm in sort of like not a unique situation. I'd say it's probably a pretty across the board situation of I don't get as much time to practice. And when I do practice, a lot of it actually happens in my garden. I will literally swing without a golf ball. I've always been quite a visual learner in the sense of like feel based as well. So I used to be a very over the top golfer. I'm now, if anything, more of a draw bias golfer, and that's mostly all come about through a lot of feel based exercises and stuff. So those practice sessions, would you say there is real value in that sort of, especially from the cognitive side of things as well when it comes to our swings, of doing those things without a golf ball sometimes as well?
As part of a wider thing, yeah. I think, again, going back to the running analogy, if somebody goes, I want to make my marathon time 20 minutes quicker, but I've only got time to do, one run every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with doing one run every 2 weeks. It's just can one run every 2 weeks decrease a marathon time by 20 minutes? There's an input-output element to it, and there are some on-course things as well which can help to improve score that isn't practice related. So it may be that maximising those is the way that it gets closer to a 5. But yeah, as part of a wider practice schedule, like mirror swings, even just doing drills at home, like you said, if someone's a massively over the top kind of swinging the golf club, putting a stick in the ground, practicing swinging it underneath it, maybe hitting an air ball, they can all be good things. The problem with that is that the specific skill of hitting a golf ball and performing well on the golf course, if we remember that we want to make practice as on-course as possible, where the swings without a ball are very much at the technical end of the practice, which is a key part of practice, but doing only that is going to be a struggle to make big changes on the course. So if you're doing a lot of swings at home, it might be that you do less technical practice at the driving range, and you just, when you're there, you do your one session a week, and that's completely changing targets, pressure-based games, maybe playing some virtual golf on the top tracer, and then focusing on short game and putting.
That's perfect. Yeah, I like that, Andy. That's cool. Well, that's 2 tips that I can apply to my game. Listeners can apply as well to their games. Pretty across the board, really, isn't it? Just that idea of practicing with purpose, practicing with pressure, and then, of course, on course, just that low-hanging fruit of don't try and smash driver to be an extra 30 yards up there if that's where all the trouble is, which is there is one hole in particular which comes into my mind every time with that, as I'm sure it does with you, maybe with everyone as well. So Andy, I really appreciate your time. Is there any where can people find you to gain some more insight into the cognitive part of golf and how they can improve?
So I have an Instagram page at the Cog Coach, post regularly, lots of Q&As, and fairly active on there. So if you want to head to there, or to thecogcoach.com, where you can see about kind of all my stuff and some articles and things that I write, and all that type of thing. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome, Andy. And whereabouts are you based out of as well, if people wanted to, maybe if they're local to you, come and seek some coaching?
So I'm based in Essex, and my in-person coaching tends to be across sort of Essex, Kent type of area. So if anyone's in that region, that would be an option.
Awesome. But yeah, find him on the social at the Cog Coach. It's great.
Yeah.
Great content, Andy. That's what sort of led me to find you in the first place, really, because I saw it and was like, well, that guy makes a lot of sense.
Appreciate that, mate. Yeah, thanks very much.
No problem at all, Andy. I really appreciate your time, mate, and thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, cheers for having me on, mate.
Thanks, mate.